Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We're diving straight into a primary source today that, well, it strips away the flashy national headlines and shows you the actual raw mechanics of how a community is actually run.
Yeah, the real day-to-day stuff.
Right. We have the complete transcript of the Gilroy City Council regular meeting from March 2nd, 2026. And, while national news gets all the attention, local city councils are where the real rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today is to extract the hidden gems from this massive document. We're looking at everything from really intensely emotional pleas about traffic fatalities to...
Debates over surveillance cameras.
Exactly. And even the surprisingly complex ways a city buys insurance. And this brand new set of state laws dictating what happens to local democracy when, of all things, the internet goes out.
It's looking at this transcript, you immediately see the incredible bandwidth that's required of local leaders. I mean, they move from standard administrative proclamations straight into the public comment section.
Yeah.
And that public comment period is where the sort of abstract idea of governance just collides with very real human emotion.
It really does. And the emotional core of this specific meeting centers entirely around a recent tragedy. There were two individuals identified in the transcript as Andy and Stalka, and they were killed near a local elementary school, Las Animas School.
Right, yeah.
And during the public comment period, you hear citizens just demanding immediate changes to the traffic patterns there. One resident, Jess Moreno, brings a timeline to the podium that is, it's just staggering. He notes that he has been petitioning the city for traffic changes on 10th Street since 1976.
1976, that is 50 years of civic engagement on a single issue.
50 years.
What's fascinating here is how he points out this was his third formal presentation over the decades. This spans multiple mayors, door-to-door petitions, local newspaper articles, and he poses this very stark question to the council: what takes priority? Keeping an arterial road moving efficiently or protecting pedestrians?
And then another resident, Cindy Nunez, she takes a completely different tactical approach. She tells the council she has actually just started volunteering as a crossing guard at the exact corner where the accident happened.
Wow. Taking it into her own hands.
Yeah, and she delivers this powerful line telling them prevention is always easier than regret. But she didn't just bring emotion to the podium. She brought the law.
Right, and that is what makes her comment so incredibly effective. Because the city had previously stated they were conducting an engineering safety study, right?
Right.
And they needed to wait for the results of that study before adding any signage. But Cindy pushes back by citing specific state vehicle codes. She brings up section 22358.4.
Just cites it right there.
Exactly. Pointing out that California law already gives the city the authority to put up a school warning sign without waiting for a lengthy study to conclude. She uses the state's own legal framework to essentially challenge the local bureaucratic delay.
It's brilliant. And what's really cool is how citizens leverage that tiny 3-minute public comment window to force an issue onto the public record. Because if you read further into the transcript, you actually see the invisible gears of the city reacting to that exact pressure.
Right.
Later in the meeting, the city administrator gives his report and he addresses that very engineering study around Las Animas School. But the method they're using is just incredibly modern. He reveals they're actively using police department drones.
Drones.
Yeah, hovering over the school during morning and afternoon pickups to map the traffic and pedestrian patterns from above.
The contrast there is just striking. You have a citizen who has been using paper petitions and door-to-door campaigning since 1976, and the city's response in 2026 involves deploying aerial drones to gather real-time data on school drop-off behavior.
Yeah.
It is a perfect snapshot of how civic feedback loops are evolving.
Totally. And traffic safety wasn't the only intense public safety issue brought forward by the community either. We also see a significant discussion surrounding license plate readers, the FLOCK cameras.
Right. The transcript notes an ongoing debate within the county regarding the widespread use of these surveillance tools by police departments. And impartially looking at the public comments here, we see two very distinct viewpoints clashing.
Yeah, so on one side, you have various groups raising significant data privacy concerns, arguing heavily against expanding this type of surveillance network.
Which is a valid concern for many.
Sure. And then on the other side of that debate, a resident named Ron Kirkish took the podium to argue heavily in favor of the cameras. And he explicitly called the privacy concerns a canard, essentially calling it a red herring or a distraction.
Right. And to back up his perspective, he presented the council with real-world applications. He stated these cameras are vital for tracking auto thefts and kidnappings.
Yeah, and the most gripping example he provided was a recent local murder near a junior high school. He noted that a fellow CK camera in a neighboring town flagged the suspect's vehicle, and that led to an arrest all the way up in Sacramento very shortly after the crime.
It's a profound tension playing out in municipalities everywhere right now. You have the demand for rapid, technologically advanced law enforcement tools.
Colliding directly with the unease over ubiquitous public surveillance.
Exactly. The council essentially has to weigh the tangible result of a solved murder against the intangible value of public privacy.
It's a tough spot, and following those incredibly heavy topics, roadway tragedies and debates over murder investigations and surveillance, the public comment period takes a sharp, almost jarring pivot into community collaboration.
It really does.
A resident named Greg Felios uses his time simply to praise a recent Gilroy Chamber of Commerce networking luncheon.
Which is such a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
He highlights a specific dynamic he observed there, marveling at how local business competitors, specifically different wineries and restaurants, were actively promoting each other.
Yeah.
Rather than fiercely guarding their customer base, they were recommending competing establishments to visitors to elevate the entire local ecosystem.
I love that. It provides a necessary balance to the transcript. Government meetings are so often entirely focused on conflict and crisis, so it's notable when a resident uses their time just to put a moment of community solidarity on the official record.
Yeah, that's rare.
But once the citizens step away from the microphone, the council has to transition to the actual mechanics of running the corporation that is the city.
Which brings us to a massively consequential, yet entirely invisible aspect of local governance: municipal liability.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It sounds dry, but it's huge. The city's HR director and risk manager, Leanne, presented a business item regarding the Municipal Pooling Authority, or the MPA.
Right, because if you stop and think about the physical assets a city manages, it is staggering. They operate police cruisers, massive cyber infrastructures, public parks, heavy maintenance machinery, hundreds of employees.
Yeah.
If a citizen gets injured on city property or a city vehicle causes a major accident,
The financial liability is astronomical.
astronomical. So how do you possibly buy an insurance policy for an entire city without bankrupting the taxpayers?
You do it through aggressive economies of scale. A standalone city trying to buy comprehensive insurance on the open market would face premiums that would absolutely decimate their general fund.
Yeah.
So Gilroy pulls its resources together with 20 other government agencies to form this joint authority.
And Leanne broke down exactly how the layers of this financial safety net are structured. The city has what is called a self-insured retention of $50,000.
Like a deductible.
Exactly. You can think of that as the city's baseline deductible. From there, the MPA pool steps in and covers the next $1 million directly from their shared funds.
But $1 million is a drop in the bucket for a catastrophic municipal lawsuit.
A total drop in the bucket.
So through another agency, this pool of 21 cities leverages their combined buying power to purchase excess insurance layered on top of that, extend from $10 million all the way up to $32 million in coverage.
$32 million.
And this blanket covers general liability, property damage, deadly weapons policies, critical cyber attack coverage, all of it.
And the agenda item they actually voted on was simply updating the legal agreement that binds these cities together to ensure they remain compliant with state regulations.
Right.
It's the kind of bureaucratic paperwork that sounds incredibly dry on the surface, but if that MPA agreement fractures, a single multi-million-dollar lawsuit over a park injury could literally bankrupt a community.
Exactly. And speaking of managing municipal assets, Mayor Bozo provided a report on the Gilroy Gardens Board of Directors, highlighting how they handle physical risk and revenue generation. They just authorized spending up to $1 million on deferred maintenance and park upgrades.
But they're doing it strategically. They aren't just writing $1 million check and walking away. They are releasing the funds in two $500,000 phases.
Right.
Yeah, the mayor noted these funds target state-regulated safety measures and aesthetic improvements to boost guest satisfaction. By phasing the money, they ensure the park's actual revenue throughout the year justifies the ongoing capital expense.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire first half of this meeting revolves around managing different types of risk. The physical risk of traffic, the investigative risk of crime, and the financial risk of lawsuits and deferred maintenance.
All right.
And as the council members move into their individual reports, they start dropping demographic and economic data points that show exactly who they are managing these risks for.
And the data points paint a really vivid picture of the region. For instance, Councilmember Ramirez reported on attending the State of the Valley event.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Very. And the study presented there highlighted the broader macroeconomic reality of Silicon Valley. Just impartially reporting the data shared with the council, the study showed an almost unfathomable amount of wealth generated in the region.
Unfathomable is the word.
But a severe, challenging discrepancy in how it is distributed, with a very small percentage of the population holding the vast majority of that wealth.
And dealing with the downstream effects of that wealth gap is a primary function of local government. On a more targeted level of resource distribution, Councilmember Broco reported on the local impact of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library grant.
Ah, this was great.
Yeah. Because of that program, 17,000 local kids are now receiving a physical, free book mailed to them every single month.
17,000 books. I mean, the logistics of mailing 17,000 books a month into a single community is a massive undertaking, and obviously a huge boost for early childhood literacy.
For sure.
And then Mayor Bozo shared an anecdote that really highlights the shifting demographics of the city. He attended a Ramadan iftar hosted by the South Valley Islamic community. And he shared that when this local organization started back in 1999, they had about 20 people.
And today?
Today, their membership sits at around 500.
Wow. And the diversity within that one organization alone is remarkable. The mayor noted there were 19 different ethnicities represented at the event,
Yeah.
including members tracing their heritage to Fiji, Morocco, Indonesia, and Chile.
All under one roof. And they're heavily integrated into the local support network, too. They contribute to the Salvation Army, Rebecca Children's Services, and a safe car park program in a neighboring city. So you really get this sense of a highly diverse, interconnected community.
You really do.
But the question becomes, how does a diverse modern community actually participate in government in a post-pandemic world?
That is the question.
Which brings us to what is arguably the most consequential legislative item of the night. Senate Bill 707.
Presented by City Attorney Andy and City Clerk Kim. SB 707 was dubbed the New Brown Act. Now, the Brown Act is California's foundational law guaranteeing the public's right to attend and participate in local legislative meetings.
Right.
SB 707 radically rewrites those rules to adapt to the digital age, starting with the politicians themselves.
Yeah, the teleconferencing rules for city council members have completely changed. Previously, there was this old attorney general opinion that stated attending a meeting physically was an, quote, essential job function.
Right.
Because of that strict interpretation, if a council member had a disability preventing them from being in the room, they generally couldn't be accommodated to vote remotely.
Which is entirely out of step with modern workplace accommodations.
Completely.
So SB 707 rectifies that. If a member has a disability, the city must provide reasonable accommodation for remote participation, and they still count toward the physical quorum.
Yeah.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, the law introduces another concept called just cause for remote participation.
Yeah.
Which council members can invoke a limited number of times a year for issues like contagious illnesses or caregiving emergencies.
But there's a highly specific clause buried in this new law that the city attorney highlighted. A council member can invoke just cause to teleconference in for a physical or mental condition, and this is the exact phrasing, that is not a disability.
It's an incredibly broad legal standard, and the city attorney explicitly pointed out the potential ramifications of this. Theoretically, this could include a council member who is experiencing general anxiety about attending a specific meeting.
Or perhaps feels intimidated by another member of the council.
Exactly. They could legally use that as justification to stay home and dial in.
Think about the political dynamics that introduces. If a controversial vote is on the agenda and the chambers are packed with angry constituents, a council member could potentially invoke the anxiety clause to vote from the comfort of their living room.
It changes everything.
But the rules governing the public's access are where the law gets truly disruptive. By July 1st, the state mandates that cities must allow two-way remote public participation. And that brings us to the Internet disruption policy.
Right. The council had to formally vote on a policy dictating what happens when the technology inevitably fails. The rule mandates that if the Internet drops or the Zoom connection fails, the city council must halt the open session of their meeting immediately.
So what does this all mean? It means they cannot conduct any public business, they cannot take any votes, they cannot even have official discussions. They must pause the meeting for at least 1 full hour to try and fix the connection to ensure that the citizens watching remotely are not disenfranchised.
If we compare this to the private sector, it is a staggering mandate.
Hmm.
If the Wi-Fi drops at a corporate office, employees shift to offline work or take a break. But in local government, a dropped internet connection now legally paralyzes the legislative process.
Yeah.
The virtual attendees are now granted the exact same legal weight as the physical attendees sitting in the room.
It's wild. And upgrading the infrastructure to meet these legal standards carries a very real financial cost. The city clerk outlined the logistics. Because over 20% of Gilroy's population speaks Spanish, the city is required to translate all agendas.
Right.
They must maintain publicly accessible physical posting boards outside the building so citizens can access translated agendas at any hour.
And technologically, upgrading the council chambers to handle this mandated two-way Zoom webinar setup requires a $6,000 one-time fee, plus roughly $3,800 annually for the software subscriptions.
Yeah.
Transparency and accessibility are vital to democracy, but they are not free line items in a municipal budget.
No, they're not. Which perfectly transitions us to the final major discussion of the transcript, the agonizing reality of funding public transit.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Councilmember Hilton provided a highly sobering report regarding the Valley Transportation Authority, or VTA, and the Caltrain South County Connector.
This is where municipal goals collide head-on with stark financial realities. Councilmember Hilton presented the numbers for this train service. It currently costs $15 million a year to operate.
$15 million.
However, it is only serving 405 riders Monday through Friday.
Just think about the math on that for a second. You are spending $15 million annually to move 405 people a day. And the council member provided vital context for why the ridership is so staggeringly low. The Transit Authority doesn't even own the tracks. The Union Pacific Railroad does. Furthermore, the tracks heading down to the city aren't electrified, which limits the types of trains that can even run.
This raises an important question. How does a local government justify that massive subsidy when facing budget deficits? The core argument for mass transit is reducing traffic congestion.
Right.
But the council member pointed out that at the Morgan Hill checkpoint on Highway 101, they are tracking 142,000 vehicles a day.
So you have 142,000 cars sitting in gridlock, while a $15 million train runs with 405 people on it.
Yeah.
It is a brutal reality check. The city wants to fund mass transit, they want to hit environmental goals and get people out of their cars, but the current infrastructure simply isn't serving the actual travel patterns of the citizens.
And when ridership numbers are that low and transit authorities are staring down massive budget deficits, the pressure to cut those services becomes mathematically overwhelming, regardless of the broader environmental goals.
Totally.
It really illustrates the impossible choices local leaders have to make when allocating limited funds.
It really does. And that brings the substantive business of this meeting to a close. When you step back and look at the scope of this one document, it is genuinely incredible.
It is.
We started with raw human grief and traffic fatalities. We untangled the complex administration of a $32 million insurance pool required just to keep the city's doors open. We looked at the stark financial struggles of public transit. And we examined how state laws like SB 707 are entirely rewriting the rules of civic engagement for a digital age.
And it is crucial to remember that this exact machinery is operating in your own city or town every single week.
Yeah.
It is tucked away in evening agendas that most people never read, but it is directly shaping your daily commute, the safety of your neighborhoods, and the distribution of your tax dollars.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought regarding that new Brown Act, SB 707.
Oh.
We discussed how a city council is now legally required to completely halt their physical in-person meeting for up to an hour if the internet drops.
Right.
If the physical gathering of elected officials and citizens in a brick-and-mortar city hall must legally cease to function the second the Wi-Fi router blinks out, does that mean the virtual town hall has officially superseded the physical building as the true seat of local democracy?
Wow.
Something to think about the next time your Zoom call drops.